I'm JP Cole.
And I'm Julie Cole.
And we are the co-owners of Cole Wellness, which is a wellness center located in Irmo, South Carolina. We have a unique multidisciplinary approach to treatment in which we incorporate psychotherapy, health coaching, personal training, and in the last few years, we've recently added massage therapy, chiropractic, and psychiatry as well.
Yep. And we're just welcoming you to our Build Your Best Life series on our Cole Wellness podcast. So thanks for being with us, and we look forward to offering you some really good content.
What's up, everybody? I'm JP Cole.
And I'm Julie Cole.
And this is the Cole Wellness Podcast. We'd like to welcome you back.
Mm-hmm.
This is week 6, I think.
Can you believe it?
Super excited about that.
It's nuts.
Trying to practice what we preach with consistency, and we put out one every week. So if you're following us, we really appreciate that.
Yeah.
We've kind of gotten in the habit of every week we want to start out with a piece of gratitude. The last couple weeks we have kind of talked about individuals and businesses that we've partnered with. Today we kind of want to just talk a little bit about the principle of gratitude for having a purpose.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and even just that being clear about what our purpose is as, professionals, in that this ends up being a part of that.
Yeah.
Right. The bringing purpose, bringing our purpose to bear to share with the world.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and just the gift of being grateful for that having a purpose brings meaning, brings value, brings just kind of turns life into a gift. And so one of the reasons that we want to share that with people is because the hope of this Build Your Best Life podcast really is to help people find their own purpose. That's one of the questions that I feel that the vast majority of people stepping into my office are trying to answer, which is, why am I here? What is my purpose? What's going to bring meaning and value to my life? And I feel really blessed that I feel like ours has been made really clear over the last couple years.
Absolutely.
And that's been cemented with the help of a lot of other people. And so today, as we're going into the topic of how to build purpose and how to build a bigger why, I just thought about how grateful I am that that's been an experience that we've had and get to share with others.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that one thing that I can't underscore enough is that we come on here and we do this content, but it's a parallel process. Like we are walking through a lot of the stuff that we share, and we have walked through it, and it's part of our daily life, so the parallel process of challenging people to be consistent, and finding their purpose to help them be consistent. Sorry, somebody just opened a garage door next door, so we might have some background noise.
No big deal.
But to help us be consistent. So an example was 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, we had a really late night because of an emergency. We got up and we did it anyway. We want to say a thank you to Scott. Scott was sick last night, but he's here this morning doing the podcast with us.
Like a boss.
Yeah, like a boss, man. Just like showing up, suiting up and showing up and helping us stay consistent, because he could have been like, no, we're going to rest and do it this weekend. But he was like, nope, we're going to do this thing. And so we're going to knock it out. And so it's that piece, and it kind of gets into what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we had talked in the last couple of weeks about talking about the why, but we kind of shifted that to the statement really we've moved to is purpose building. Yeah. And a lot of people, when they think about why, they think about Simon Sinek and start with why and all of that kind of stuff. And it's, it's a really good model. That's actually a, business model. So, for us, it's really about how do we stick to this, personally. And so purpose building is something that connects more meaningfully, for individual change processes. Yep. So, in the blog this week, we do have a blog, colewellness.com. You can find it there, and we're going to start working on, we do a complimentary blog to this podcast where we're going to start putting some other content on there, as well to, just to start being more active on that.
And real quick, we've had a lot of people asking us all right, I've had a number of people say, we want to listen to your content. We don't know where it's at. One of the easiest interfaces to use is just go to our website. There's a blog page. There's a podcast page. You can link to Spotify, iTunes, YouTube from there. Yep. There's also a link in our Instagram. If you catch us follow our Instagram page, there's a link there that will connect you at least to all the YouTube. Through Spotify and iTunes, you can also subscribe, and then you'll get notifications whenever there's been updates. But the easiest, it seems like the fastest way, is just go to the website, check out the podcast page, and then you can link to it from there from your phone. and listen at your convenience.
And you can also sign up for the blog. So if you actually
Yeah.
go to the blog page on the, if you go to the tab and pick the blog page at the top, it says
And
sign
sign
up,
up.
and you can just put your email address in, and it'll just notify you when there's a new blog
Yeah.
posted. And then that way too, it's not just when the content, that's complimentary to the podcast comes, comes into play, but when we actually
Put out
post
other stuff too. Yep.
So we, the first line I say on the blog this week is building purpose is the foundation of change behavior. Or changing our behavior or change. And then it says why. Well, I was thinking about as I was writing it, how we've repeatedly talked about how the brain, overestimates what can be accomplished in the short term, and how it underestimates what can be accomplished in the long term.
Yeah.
And I just realized I wrote that wrong on here, so I got to fix that in a minute.
Wow.
And the reason, why we wanted to talk about that is rehashing some of the things that we've already hit on that really are important to thinking about purpose building, and why this is the last piece we're kind of covering. So uncomfortable feelings are inevitable when we're going through change, right? I think about once upon a time. Sorry.
We have somebody working out in the background, and it is Cherry. That's awesome. I don't think you'll be able to hear it. It's good. Okay.
But and I think about, it's the old, better the devil than the one you don't.
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's so hard because we're so afraid of what happens when change happens that sometimes we can be totally disillusioned. We can understand that what we're doing isn't working. We can be dissatisfied, depressed, have a hard time, be having like lots of health and mental health effects, physical health, spiritual health. But we still feel stuck. And so when we start moving towards change, we get really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And uncomfortable feelings are actually inevitable.
Yeah. It's going to happen.
And for a lot of people, shame shows up a lot.
It's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Negative self-talk is something everybody has to contend with, right? Sticking points are inevitable. Either you stall or you have plateaus. But also, too, sometimes, you go out of town and maybe you've tried to change your eating, and you go out of town and you don't eat the way you want to, or you've been doing really good about, hitting meetings and really just feeling good in recovery, and you miss a few meetings, or you go hang out with your family who's really not good for your mental health. Sticking points are inevitable. Wrestling with our expectations is normal and actually an essential part of the process. Periods of ambivalence are inevitable, right?
And we covered that a little bit. Yeah.
Where you feel two ways about one thing, and a big one is it's human nature to stop doing what works when it starts working.
Across the board.
Right.
Every single human being I've ever met is like, I found this thing that worked, and then I stopped doing it.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
I think part of what I'm hearing you say that I think is really important is that if we want to make a meaningful change in our life, it's going to be difficult.
That's right.
There's going to be a lot of barriers.
Sure.
And the best opportunity we can give ourselves to being successful with it is to go ahead and know that the truth is staying the same is difficult.
Absolutely.
It's like anytime I get to the point where I want to change my life, it's because it's been difficult. It's because I don't like how my life is going, whether that's physical, mental, emotional. It's already been difficult, but yet I get fearful of it being maybe more difficult.
Right.
But I think as backwards as this is, wrapping our heads around no matter what, every pathway from here is difficult.
Sure.
Changing your behavior is hard.
Yep.
Staying the same is hard.
Right.
All of it's going to be a little bit miserable and difficult at times, and I'd rather put myself in the arena of risk to experience a better life for myself.
That's
and
right.
not be scared to stay the same, because all systems are working towards keeping us at homeostasis, whether it's our body, it's our family system, it's our environment, it's our social network.
Yep.
Like, change is scary for everybody, and we oftentimes will get pushback in all areas.
Which reminds me, like this idea, a lot of times when we realize that we need to make a change, we start running from the thing it is we're uncomfortable with in the moment, right? So we try to, it's like kind of like running from what we don't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that that's going to be enough to sustain us, right? And then a week in, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, when, I have a fight with somebody or the scale doesn't move or depression comes back, or I have an anxiety attack or, we could extrapolate this out, and then what happens is all of a sudden, we don't remember what it was like to run from, what it was we were running from, because that feels like the comfortable thing.
Yeah.
Because what we're trying to do now feels uncomfortable. It feels like being exposed.
Yeah.
Like literally like being exposed. And so the idea of this larger purpose, being clear about that is really, that's the glue that helps us stick in when things get hard.
Yeah. If we don't have that, it's going to be real easy to give up. And quite frankly, it's almost addictive to give up.
Yeah.
Because the sense of relief we get when we give up on a goal, or and it's not giving up, when we
go back to what's familiar.
There's this automatic, it's like, how many times have you been, I always go back to the physical. I feel like that the physical is the first place that connects us to these other aspects of life.
Sure.
But when we make a change, a dietary change, and we're sticking with it for a while and it gets uncomfortable, what do? We go back to comfort food. We go back to that meal that makes us feel safe and secure and isn't necessarily the best for our health. And we get this huge dopamine release of like, that feels good.
Well, it's a prime
but it doesn't get us where we
neural
want to
pathway.
go.
So,
absolutely.
It's like flooding it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like we have to repeatedly change behavior to create a complementary neural pathway.
Absolutely.
And the crazy part about it is we can just start thinking about what the old life was like, and we can prime that old neural pathway.
Yeah.
It's part of like what
the whole process of addiction.
Is.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's true for any, returning or having a recurrence into any old behavior.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Ed Mutum. He used to say, if you're actually doing it, it's not old behavior.
Yeah.
It's
current
behavior. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not engaging in old behavior if I'm still doing it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Purpose is the larger glue that holds it together.
So how do we find that? What are some things that we can do to dig in? A couple weeks ago, we talked about the surface level kind of smart goal setting. At least that'll keep us on track with measurable, attainable, specific, relative, relevant and time-bound change. Last week we talked about visualizing that change and what it would feel like, how our thinking would be differently, how our physical, emotional, spiritual health would be different.
Sure.
But how do we build that bigger purpose of why am I actually doing this thing?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, partially because ultimately we're going to have to visualize the bigger thing to really be able to, to prime our mind to what can be accomplished, right? And really kind of help our mind really contend with, accurately assessing and contending with the present and what's possible in the long term. Because what happens a lot of times when we shortchange our, we short circuit our motivation by, getting frustrated and giving up, is that what we can't visualize is that we're actually creating in the end what we don't want to happen in the end. So we want a healthy life. We want longevity. We want our relationship to work. We want, all of that stuff. And so, I'll frame it and say escape behaviors. Yeah. When we're in change and we're feeling exposed, we want to jump into escape behaviors. Yeah. In old behaviors or escape behaviors, but sometimes maladaptive new behaviors are also escape behaviors.
Yeah, it's like I tell clients all the time, all coping is either truthfully edifying, building up our lives, getting us closer to who and what's important to us, or it's blotting out, our intolerable situation that's far from who and what's important to us.
That's right.
And so our goal is to try to be able to figure out, all right, which of those behaviors that actually genuinely help me get closer to who and what's important to me.
That's right.
And not just disconnect me from it for a time,
right?
Or let me forget about it. Give me a sense of ease and comfort for a short amount of time,
right?
So that I don't have to think about it. But tomorrow I wake up and I'm still in the same spot.
Sure.
Right.
Well, it's like it's funny. so we can jump right into this. I can use some superficial examples, and we're going to talk about a way, like an actual mechanism you can do to dig in and understand a larger purpose, right? But I remember when I was trying to quit smoking, you had already quit smoking, and I was trying to quit smoking. And I can tell you, don't underestimate the value of, everybody talks about motives in change behavior. But like, let me tell you, we were at Edisto Beach. I just bought a pack of cigarettes. I remember I was packing it, and I said, God, I need to quit smoking. You were like, when? Now, this was in 2008. He was like, 2011. I was like, how about right now, asshole? Literally.
Yeah.
And I smoked the rest of that pack, and I haven't had a cigarette since. But that wasn't the end of the story, right?
So shame your loved one into change behavior.
No, but the real piece of it was, I can remember you were able to share with me what had helped you. And the one thing I can remember is you kept saying, like, the obsession can't be removed if you keep feeding it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the thing about neural pathways and understanding it is that, obsessions, like for old behavior, can't be removed if we feed them.
Yeah. So key.
Yeah.
And once we do that, I mean, you probably had this experience, but I tried to quit smoking like hundreds of times, but it was
just
always
one.
because.
Just gonna have one cigarette.
Do what?
Just gonna have one cigarette. One puff. Give me one hit off of that thing.
But it was like I had to, I don't know the word I'm trying to, I had to dig up a deeper purpose and meaning behind why. Like at first it was like, I don't want to quit because I don't want to be that guy that smells like cigarettes and girls aren't going to want to date me. Yeah. Or this really far off, of course I don't want to die from lung cancer, which I don't necessarily have any, you know what I mean? Like some people smoke and they don't get that. Sure. And so that didn't have a lot of weight. And it was always like pushing off of these negative things.
Running from what? Yeah.
Instead of moving towards, it's like, so for me, one of the things was realizing that like, that I had started working out, and the gym I went to, I would do a couple sets and then I'd go outside and smoke a cigarette. And I did that for a couple months until I realized the only cigarette butts on the ground outside were mine. Right. And it like hit me like a ton of bricks that like I'm trying to move towards a life that's different. And this is the one thing, that is unique and different and absolutely unlike all of the other people that I'm trying to be like. Yeah.
Like the other one.
It stood out like a sore, and for me it was like, this doesn't help me get towards ultimate health. Right. And so it doesn't belong. If I were to say who and what's important to me, I would say my family, my friends, like my health, a long, full, genuine life, right? This doesn't get me any closer to that.
That's right.
And it made it easier.
Yeah. Well, and that was one piece, right? So, like, for me, it was the same. I started working out again. Yeah. And I can remember, like, the first time Matt put me through a real, like, Metcon. And I was, like, in the bathroom for 30 minutes after with my head between my knees. I literally couldn't even sit up. And I just couldn't catch my breath. Yeah. And I can remember leaving there. And I can remember the first workout, like, and feeling like that after I quit smoking. But then the next one
was better.
Yeah. And, like, and so it was like Groundhog Day when I was still smoking, right? But here's the other piece, and I know you remember this, is like the other piece, and I warn people about this when they're quitting smoking so that they're aware of it. But the other piece I wasn't really connected to at first was, so I had, sorry, I'm getting distracted by Gabriel's grunting in the gym next door. The part I had to tie back to is, okay. I remember when I was like, I went to a conference when I was 8 years sober, right? A social work conference. And this guy, he was a neuro researcher, and he said, I want to tell you this, the brain on nicotine is not a sober brain. And I was like, what? You can't discount my, and so I'm tying all this to, I remember when I first, when I was like, like a month out, I started with a major depression, and it lasted probably about 2 months. Yeah. I mean, just major depression. Yeah. Like it was really hard. Yeah. And when I came out of it, I had this clarity that I'd never had. And I was at that point 10 years sober.
Yeah.
At this clarity I had never had. And I had always had these ups and downs of my emotional state that settled out afterward. And I realized, oh, wait, that's what it was. And interestingly, as I was going through it, I was tying back to that research that I'd heard years ago, and it connected for me. So that was part of it too. His purpose was like, oh, wait, I am creating a stronger recovery brain and recovery mind. Yeah. And actually creating a stronger emotional state and not only a physical state, but an emotional state. Yeah. Yeah. And quite honestly, anything we use as escape behaviors also pushes us away from our relationship with our higher power, with God, for people who have that spiritual perspective. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when I had not intended on us talking about smoking the whole time, but I had a similar experience with Andy, which was one of my first mentors who, he pulled me aside after a meeting one day and was just like, I'll tell you something that nobody else is willing to tell you, which is that, you can't fully experience what it's like to have that sober mind that you're talking about while you're still smoking. Right. And he identified a couple other things that were not necessarily common taboo for the recovery fellowship. And at first it ticked me off, Right. But what I found was that anything that I'm relying on to take me out of the moment, to do something for me, outside of me, to make me feel different in the moment. And I was still at a place with cigarettes where it was like, here I am not using other stuff, which was great. Sure. But I was still, my entire day hinged around when I could smoke. That's right. And after I ate meals, I needed to smoke. And if I got stressed, my whole lifestyle was addicted to that pattern in order to feel a sense of ease and comfort. And so when it was relieved, it took a while, but I started to realize, like, what does that feel like to wake up in the morning and not have, and not have something controlling me to the point of saying, you have to do this first. Right. Yeah. Not running out. You can do what you want to do after. But you're going to do this first. Mm-hmm. A lot of us in longer term recovery have to come to terms with food as being one of those things. Like, absolutely. As you unveil, again, we didn't intend to talk about this, but like the farther that we go into recovery, the more we realize here are these different things that pop up in our lives that we realize they're still telling me what to do. It's still in control. Food is still telling me where we're going to stop and when we travel. That's right. Where I'm going to be and when, throughout my day. And so taking time periods of taking a look at our food and practicing fasting and doing, distances us from being dominated by those things and allows us to better understand what our true purpose really is, rather than I don't like anybody telling me what to do. Sure. Which is a helpful tool. Once I realize that whatever this behavior, this thing is now dictating what I'm going to do with my time, money, and resources. Right. It sometimes pisses me off enough that I want to do something about it, because I don't want anybody telling me what to do with my time, money, and resources. That's right. Absolutely. Sorry, that was a weird tangent, but
no. I think it's great, because I think it's a good point, and I really want to point out that, like, as we get into, step 2, which is a deep and meaningful understanding of where you are, we'll talk about the value of one small change and, thinking about things incrementally. But I think that this is like this evolution of understanding. So like that purpose is also, as we gain clarity, as we go through the change, the purpose deepens, right? And so part of the importance of visualizing it is understanding that we have to connect to it, but that we will actually deepen that connection to it if we stay committed.
If we continue with it,
So I think that that's a great point. We talk about the first piece, which is like, it impacted my workouts, and then realized like what an impact it was having actually. So the part about it was like, I was running from smoking in the beginning. I was running from it because it was impacting my workouts. Yeah. But then as I was going through the major depression and I kind of got through that piece, I started realizing like, not that I didn't want to go back. I wanted to stay in that state. Mm-hmm. So it was something pulling me forward, not something that I was running from. Yeah. It was pulling me towards something positive.
Instead of backing away from something negative. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I moved on and, I was able to, really deepen my workouts and do that kind of stuff. Yeah. So come say hey real quick. Oh. You got to pop around here. You say hey to Lindsay, everybody. Sorry. Just wave, and you just wave. You have to bend down and say
We will-
hey.
We will introduce Lindsay further. She's
Yeah.
our massage
Which one
therapist.
did you say hey? You're walking
Yep.
by. She. You and Lindsay was pink cloud massage. So
Yeah.
she's works out of her office. So she was walking by getting a cup of coffee. So we wanted to say hi. But it was those things we're talking about,
Yeah.
and then it's also those pieces where you realize like, oh wait, I have freedom to put my attention towards connecting with people while I'm having a meal.
Yeah.
Right. Not going out and disrupting the process, being able to stay in bed and, get an extra 5 minutes of sleep or take a moment to do some meditation or, you know what I mean? Snuggle, if that's your thing, or whatever. Like, so your purpose building becomes the things that the light that pulls you, forward,
Yeah.
not something you're running from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because anytime you're running from something, the moment you get relief from it, and that's part of the reason why as soon as we start to see results, we quit doing it because our purpose is tied to something that's behind us, not something that's in front of us.
It's the speed trap principle. I
Yeah.
always use the example of I'm really good at minding my speed when police officers are visible. And as soon as that threat or that danger or that potential consequence, it's like as soon as I pull over in the right lane and they speed up behind me and then go around me and get the car in front of me.
Right in behind them.
And I pass them, I'm like, for a couple minutes. And then I eventually speed back up.
That's right.
And it's not until I begin to take a deeper look at I value the people's lives in my car. I value the safety of the other people on the road. I value the fact that what is 5 more miles an hour going to do, like how much faster am I really getting to Dollywood? A little bit faster over the course of a couple hours, but still, not that much faster. Now I'm willing to drive a little bit more the speed limit.
Right.
Okay, so I want to be mindful of time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I was going to say, we had talked about a framework for kind of
Yes.
digging in.
Yeah.
So,
So this is one tool that we use regularly on how to, because purpose isn't something that you just say, oh, my purpose is I want to
help
and you
others.
Just, help others, and I just pull it out of thin air.
Because then what happens is helping others becomes the escape behavior.
Yeah.
This is a really important point because the behavior, the change behavior can also be the escape.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And it can be, and it is that a healthier escape? Absolutely. But eventually it will stop working.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So and we'll get to the second one in a second. The first skill that I regularly talk to people about is take the time to write, and we talked about it earlier, take the time to write down who and what's important to me.
Right.
And then that can be a litmus test of, is this thing helping me get closer to that or farther away from that?
Right.
Another thing to build a deeper meaning in something is to ask yourself prompt questions and try to dig a little bit deeper with each passing. So, the other week we talked about, weight loss is always one of the first ones, right?
That's right.
And it's really a surface level thing. It's an aesthetic thing a lot of times. And so we say, I want to lose weight, right? And how can we prompt ourselves with, that's important to me because,
right. So you start with the I want stem.
Yeah.
I want to lose weight. And that's important to me because, right?
Yeah.
So that's important to me because I want to feel healthier.
Yeah.
Or I want to be able to play with my kids. Or I want to be able to just fit in a bathing suit. I want to be able to go on the cruise and look like I did in high school, to use that example that you gave, right?
And then any of those things. And that's important to me to look and feel better on that cruise because.
Right. Yeah. Right. So what is next? So it's I want to feel good on that cruise because I don't want to be worried about what everybody's looking at. Feeling like everybody's looking at me because we all think that everybody's judging us and they're not. Right.
And it's important to me that I don't feel like other people are judging me because.
Sure. Because I need to be strong in who I am. Right. And so I want to be sure of who I am and have self-confidence.
Yeah.
Right.
So at the end of it, the real purpose is I don't want to judge myself.
Right.
It's the hell with other people.
That's right.
The real purpose and meaning here is that I want to be proud of and comfortable in my own skin. This isn't about 5 or 10 pounds.
Right.
This is about that my real purpose and meaning here is I want to be an authentic version of myself in which I have self-confidence and I believe in myself, and I really don't care what other people think, because it's never been about what other people think. It's always been that I agree with them that it's the problem.
Sure, it's a reflection of our internal state.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why I say, at the beginning I said shame is normal, because we feel shamed by other people, but that actually gets it pings off of something in us.
It's just a reflection,
right?
Of ourselves.
It pings
for sure.
off of something in us,
Mm-hmm.
which is why when we talk about social justice or reducing, stigma,
Yeah.
stigma reduces discrimination, and that's
Mm-hmm.
an internal process as well.
Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, we're going to Utah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I want to go to Utah, and I want to be able to hike the high elevation hikes, which we
Mhm.
don't have. Like, the elevation hikes there really don't exist on the East Coast,
Yeah.
I mean, they do,
Not like
but
that. Yeah.
not, one or two places on the East
Mhm.
Coast, right? So the norm is, 3 or 4,000 feet.
Mhm.
And so that's a daunting task. I mean, you can feel like you're in shape, but that's a whole different
Yeah.
ball game, right?
Yeah.
So digging into that for me was, and that's important to me because I want to be able to experience Utah,
Yeah.
right? And that's important to me because I want to be able to have the experience with you
Mm-hmm.
and us to be able to go together,
Yeah.
right? And that's important to me because I want to feel connected,
Mhm.
and I don't want to be spending the whole time feeling miserable,
Yeah.
right? And if you've ever done a 3,000-foot elevation hike, you can feel miserable even when you're in shape.
Really
right?
quickly. Yeah. So it's got to have more to it than.
Shuffle step. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's, I want to take a cool Instagram picture, that's not enough.
Right.
Halfway on that hike or halfway to training for that hike. But when you have that deeper purpose and meaning, which
That's
is
right.
that we want to experience something of value,
Right.
I want to be able to see places that not just
people.
anyone can go.
Right. And I don't
You
like
know?
to go. I mean, the national park overpasses are great, but I want to get off. I like to get lost.
Yeah.
Like, I like to just go and wander and get lost. And,
Mhm.
that does, also don't want to go and just bang out 10 miles for the sake of banging out 10
Yeah.
miles, which some people do too, come
Mhm.
hell or high water. And you and I have talked about that.
Yeah.
We're practicing timing. We've done a couple elevation hikes. We're practicing our
Mhm.
timing. I don't know if y'all know, but he's like 13 inches taller than me. So, like, our paces are completely different. So I'm huffing and puffing, and he's like not feeling like anything's going
Yeah.
on, because I have to take 3 times as many steps to accomplish the same amount of
You've done 10,000 steps a mile. Yeah.
right. And so so we have to do some practicing because we have fundamentally different experiences because of that, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's we've done some practicing. We're trying to, like, plan for it,
Yeah.
and so it's being intentional on developing, doing some high intensity stuff, some intervals, doing a lot of up and down elevation stuff to
Yeah.
try to prepare ourselves as much as possible, because also too, to experience as much of it, is we also want to be able to hit more than one hike. This isn't going to be like a one and done, like,
Yeah.
run into Table Rock for the day,
Yeah.
like, we're going to be there for 8 days. 7 of those days we really want to be out hiking.
Yeah.
And so we want to be able to recover and
Yeah.
make it most of it. Mm-hmm.
So having that unveiling deeper purpose helps you stay motivated for a larger goal.
Absolutely.
Another example that I thought of, and then we'll work on wrapping up, is therapy for us.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We've
That's a big
been
one.
in
Sorry.
therapy, and I always tell people, they're like, man, y'all have been in therapy for 10
Couples
years,
therapy,
couples
by the way.
therapy since before we were even engaged.
Right.
So before I even proposed, we were in therapy, and it wasn't because things were bad.
No.
It is, I really do believe that all along it's been because we want things to be the best they possibly can be.
Absolutely.
And I think that the reason that we got that right to begin with, I think, is because we did take the time to say, hey, if we want a successful relationship in both of our lives, this slew of captives and like all these
Right. Really
unsuccessful
toxic
relationships. Yep.
Mhm.
In the slew of all that, we kind of look to, all right, people that we find who are successful at this thing, what do they do?
Right. And we polled like 6 couples we knew had
Yeah.
been married 30 plus
Long
years.
time. And across the board, one of the things that we heard was get involved in couples therapy
Yeah.
early on.
We utilize couples counseling. Mhm.
And I think it was a little bit easier for us because as therapists,
Right.
it's,
We're invested in it.
we're invested in it. But the whole purpose is that from day one, it's been, I want that type of relationship where we're still on the same page
That's right.
at 50, 60, 70, 80.
Mm-hmm.
as we are before we ever even got married.
Right.
Totally understanding that we're going to morph and change along that whole way,
Right.
but that I want a deep and useful connection throughout. And so I see a lot of couples that don't have that dig. It's like, all right, it's a crisis. We need to see somebody and talk it out for 1 or 2 sessions, and then that's it. And it's like, we've found great success, and we just show up every other week, whether there's something to talk about or not, because it's an investment in us.
And there's always something to talk about.
For you, there's
no,
always...
No. I mean, even when we come in thinking that we don't have anything to talk about.
You find something to talk about. Yeah.
No. You do. I do. But I mean, the whole point of it is, it's just that.
And next week, no.
We also, but it's that commitment. So I think that this change process, so many times I think it's a great point to like being, to shifting to step 2, which is, what we really want to jump into next week, which is, developing a deeping meaningful understanding of where we're at. Some of it's just the commitment to being transparent. We've talked about that before, but one of the things that you and I did when we got together is we literally sat down and said, what have we always done that didn't work? Let's jump in and do something opposite, So like we didn't jump into living together, and we didn't jump into, we made some really intentional decisions, but the therapy was one of them. We recognized, and I tell people, it's like living, it's like being from the same continent, but, speaking a different dialect, right? So to the assumption that with our vast, array of histories and experiences and stuff, we would be able to just communicate automatically. People think that it's just that simple. And really most people come with a host of their own history and really struggle to communicate. So we used it to fine tune our communication and work through some sticking points, And so, and interestingly, when we got into the type of therapy we're in now, we are probably in the best place we've ever been in our marriage. And we actually saw somebody model it at a conference, and we were like, we want to get into that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And we've been doing that now for years.
Yeah. For what, 8 years, I think we determined. Yeah. So I say that, is we want to, just like I make a commitment to, to sponsorship in my recovery program or mentorship, our supervision professionally. This is our commitment to our relationship and continuing to deepen it and fine tune it. Yeah. Yeah. To the larger purpose of being connected and functioning and healthy. Because most people put their, especially in our phase of life with small children,
and put everything else first.
There's all this other stuff, and you just like put your head down and slog through it. And then, your kids go off to college or do whatever, and you look up and you're like, I don't know.
Now what?
Who are you? And I don't like you, And so I want to still like you when my kids go to college.
I would prefer that you still like me when our kids go to college as well. We agree.
I will say one last thing. We actually had gotten out of this period. We did for a while, go for a while, and then, stop going and go for a while and stop going. And, the last few years we've made a commitment to go like all the time. Yeah. But it was phase of life stuff. I mean, when I was working full time and you were working for another person, we didn't make our own schedules. It was harder to get away. But I can remember, I'll share this story. I was riding down the road one day. And this is where I connected to my larger purpose of our relationship, which is that I was riding down the road one day and I was listening to the radio and they said, call in and tell us what you love about your wife. It's like around Valentine's Day, or what do you love about your wife? And this guy calls in and he says, I've been married, 45 years. I've got, 8 kids, 18 grandkids, 3 great grandkids. And so what do you love about your wife? She's a great mother. I was like, ugh. Now I say that because I want to be, you can come in. Yeah. I want to be a good mother, but when my kids are out and have been out of the house long enough to have grandkids and great grandkids, if you're still talking about my role as a mother, what does that say? Yeah. What does that say about us?
Not that you don't want to be a good mother,
I want
but
to be
an
amazing mother, but like I want us to be connected first, Yeah. I want us to be strong, and then the kids are a part of that, you know. And so I want, so if our kids are out of the house and we've been married 45 years,
and that's all I got to say.
I want you to say, she's an amazing lover.
I want to say that too.
But it's that kind of a thing.
So, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. So we've talked about service level, SMART goal setting. We talked about
JP had a vulnerable moment.
Yeah. moving on. We talked about being able to envision a far off goal. We talked about how do we practice building. What is that unveiling of a deeper purpose, a deeper meaning? Why do I really want this thing to change for me? Why do I really want? And to me, like, I have this image in my head of like, and having now been to the Grand Canyon, that is the thing that always comes up of standing on the Grand Canyon.
Yeah. For me, weeping uncontrollably.
Well, yeah, weeping uncontrollably. At any age, right? But older.
Yeah.
That I'm envisioning myself standing next to you with the best health I could possibly have at that time.
Right.
Full of laughter, joy, surrounded by family that wants to be around me, surrounded by friends that want to be around me. And if we want to climb down in that son of a bitch, we can, because we physically can.
We want to do
mentally
an in and out
we
hike.
Emotionally can.
Yeah.
Like that to me is the image of the good life.
That's right.
That things are in order enough that we could experience what the world has to offer, and that I'm surrounded by people that aren't running from me like they may have in the past.
Right.
That there is that deeper connection. Okay, so that's the image that I have in my head.
That's
when
right.
That's the image that I have in my head.
That's right.
As we backtrack to where we're actually at now, then I can figure out how do I bridge that gap.
That's right.
And it makes it a whole lot easier than when I'm talking about things like food and exercise. Like, man, it's harder to give up on that thing when I know that this is going to get me one step closer to that life that I really want to have.
Right.
So I'm much more adherent to it rather than it's a 5-pound goal or it's this surface level thing.
Right.
I want that epic story of awesomeness, and that's constantly the thing that it's like, I want to do this thing because that's on the horizon.
That's right.
On the horizon.
Well, and that also helps us with the diversity of metrics.
Yeah, for sure, because there's a lot of different things that need to change in order to get there, and a lot of things that we need to measure. So next week we're going to talk about how to better get a deep and meaningful understanding of step 2, which is where we're at right now. We got to be honest with ourselves about where we currently are at.
Right. And we don't necessarily have to spend a ton of time in that because we've talked about some of those things already.
A lot already.
The emotional pieces, but like we're, technical. Like what are some of the resources out there that we can utilize?
Yeah, for sure.
What does it look like to have a variety, a diversity of metrics?
Yeah.
And then we'll jump into the plan.
Yeah,
right?
How to create a plan for yourself. Yeah.
And I wanted to say I did get some feedback from somebody that they would like us. We've mentioned a number of times safe, supportive, accountability, and somebody asked us to really dig into what does that look like? What does it look like to have, trusting conflict or trusting accountable conversations and that kind of stuff. So I think when we get into like the planning, some of it's our mindset and how we prime ourselves coming into it, but like, this is also, useful for people on our side of the fence, who are professionals. Like it's a challenge to us. And so how do we, or even as friends, as family, as other people, how do we bring a mindset to it that we don't, it's not that we don't speak truth or we don't bring accountability, but how we do it is so important.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
We can definitely talk about that too.
All right. High fives.
Any other thoughts?
I think we're good.
I think episode 6 is done. Thank you very much. Hope that was useful.
No.
Go, don't not smoke something. Your farts smell like cookies.
You do it. Gabriel came down. He was like,
Have you ever wrestled a bear for money?
Hi, my name.